You have never had a discipline problem. The same brain that cannot start a simple task is the one that can focus for 9 hours on the right one, and that is one system, not two. There is a task you are avoiding right now. You know it matters. You know it is not even hard. And yet you have reorganized a drawer and answered emails that could have waited, doing anything to stay one step from starting it. Then later, on something you actually cared about, you looked up, and 4 hours had vanished. You aren't lazy. You are running on a different fuel than the people who make this look easy. You have been told the problem is willpower, that you are undisciplined, inconsistent, that if you just wanted it badly enough, you would do it. Society has a word for you, and the word is lazy, but the diagnosis is wrong. You do not have a broken motivation system. You have an interest-based nervous system. Most people run on what you could call an importance engine. Something is important, so their brain releases the fuel to do it, whether it is interesting or not. Your engine does not answer to importance. It answers to interest, and to a few close cousins of interest. Picture a thermostat that most people can set to the word should. They set it, and the heat comes on. You have the same thermostat, but the should setting does nothing. Yours only responds to a different dial entirely. And until you know which dial, you will keep standing in a cold room, wondering why the heat will not turn on. You have spent years trying to force the should setting to work, reminding yourself of the stakes, making the list, feeling the guilt, promising tomorrow would be different. None of it worked because you were turning a dial that was never wired to your engine. And there is one thing about this wiring that almost no one who has it ever sees. If you ever managed to fix the part you hate, you would lose something you would never trade. I will come back to why. Because it changes how you see every hour you thought you wasted. Start with where the interest engine comes from. The psychiatrist William Dodson spent decades studying brains that work this way, and he describes an interest-based nervous system as one that activates for 4 specific triggers: interest, novelty, challenge, and urgency. Watch how those 4 explain your whole life. The task you found interesting, you did without a fight. The night before a deadline, when urgency finally showed up, you did a week of work in 3 hours. A problem framed as a challenge pulled you in, while the same problem framed as a chore left you cold. And anything with novelty, anything new, felt easy right up until it stopped being new. If a task carries even one of those, your brain floods you with focus, and the work becomes almost effortless. If a task carries none of them, no amount of telling yourself it matters will switch the engine on. This is why the boring task and the fascinating task feel like they belong to 2 different people. You are the same person. You are just running on 2 different fuel readings. But here is the part that reframes the whole thing. The fuel is not a metaphor. Underneath this is dopamine, and dopamine probably isn't what you were taught it was. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the reward you feel when something good happens. The neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz spent years showing that this is not quite right. His work suggests dopamine fires before the reward, not after it. It appears to act less like a prize and more like a signal that says, this is worth spending energy on, go. For an importance-based brain, that go signal shows up for tasks marked important. For your brain, the go signal stays quiet for important and gets loud for interesting. So when you cannot start the tax form or the report, you are not choosing not to. Your brain simply has not fired the go signal yet. That is not weakness. That is chemistry doing exactly what it does. And here is what makes it so easy to miss. You cannot see a signal that has not fired. All you see is a simple task and a body that will not move. So you reach for the only explanation the world ever handed you. Something is wrong with me. But there is nothing wrong with you. The tank is just empty, and no one ever taught you what actually fills it. And that is not even the strangest part of how you are built, because the very same wiring that makes you unable to start the boring thing is what gives you a state most people can barely touch. When your interest engine does catch, it does not just turn on, it locks. Researchers call this hyperfocus, and it is the mirror image of the thing you get shamed for. The brain that scatters on the wrong task will tunnel completely into the right one, losing track of time, hunger, and everything outside the work. You already know this feeling. It is the project you stayed up until 3 a.m. for and did not notice the clock. It is the subject you learned faster than anyone around you, not because you tried harder, but because you could not stop. That was not a fluke, and it was not the good version of you that only shows up sometimes. That was the engine running on the fuel it was built for. Now ask the obvious question. If this wiring makes ordinary tasks so hard, why did it survive at all? Why do so many brains still run on interest instead of importance? Because a brain that follows interest is a brain that goes deep. It is the one that keeps digging into a problem long after a more balanced mind has moved on to something more sensible. A tribe full of importance-driven brains does what is safe and expected. It needs a few brains that lock onto the strange track in the dirt, the odd pattern in the sky, the tool that could be built a better way, and will not let it go. That relentless, interest-led depth is a survival advantage for the whole group, even when it makes daily chores a struggle for the person carrying it. That same wiring is in you. It is what lets you stay with a problem long after everyone around you has lost interest, and that is how the hardest problems have always gotten solved. The interest engine is not a defect the modern world tolerates. It is the engine that built half of what the modern world runs on. Understanding this does not start the task for you, so here is what does. The first tool is the fuel swap. Your engine ignores importance and answers to interest, novelty, challenge, and urgency. So you stop begging it to care about importance and you hand it a trigger it actually reads. Turn the boring task into a race against a timer and you have added urgency. Do it somewhere new or in a way you have never tried and you have added novelty. Turn it into a game with a score and you have added challenge. You are not forcing the engine. You are giving it the one kind of fuel it can burn. Reach for this one on the flat, colorless tasks, the admin and the errands that carry no trigger at all on their own. The second tool is body doubling. You do the task while another person is simply present in the room or on a video call doing their own work. It sounds too simple to matter, but for an interest-based brain, the presence of another person quietly raises the urgency and the accountability in the moment, and that is often enough to fire the signal. This is why you can work in a coffee shop, but not at your own desk. Use it on purpose instead of by accident. Put on a work with me video or text one person to sit on a muted call while you both start. Reach for this one when the task is not confusing, just heavy, the kind you keep pushing to a tomorrow that never comes. The third tool is the on-ramp. The wall for your brain is almost never the task. It is the starting of the task. So you shrink the start until it is too small to trigger resistance. Not write the report, but open the document and type one ugly sentence. Once the engine turns over, it tends to keep running because momentum itself becomes interesting to a brain like yours. You are not trying to do the whole thing. You are only trying to start the engine because you already know that once it catches, it can run for hours. Reach for this one whenever the task feels huge, because the size is what your brain is reacting to, and one ugly sentence is not huge. So here is what is actually true. You are not lazy. You are not undisciplined. You have an interest-based nervous system, running on a fuel most people never have to think about. And here is the thing I promise to come back to, the one almost no one with this wiring ever realizes. The inconsistency you hate and the depth you are proud of are not two separate traits. They are the same trait, seen from two sides. You cannot have a brain that tunnels for 9 hours into what it loves, and also have a brain that starts everything on command. The scattered start and the total focus come from one engine. So if you ever did fix the part you hate, you would have to give up the part you are proud of. They do not come apart. The part of you that you have been trying to fix is bolted to the part of you that does your best work. You were never broken. You were misfueled, running on a dial the world kept telling you to ignore. Learn your fuel, and the same wiring that made ordinary days so hard becomes the most powerful focus you will ever own. Now, if the thing stopping you is not a lack of interest, but a quiet fear that you will do it wrong, that is a different engine entirely, and it has its own fix. I break that one down in the video on why you cannot start until everything is perfect, and it pairs with this one. I also made a free guide that maps your specific wiring and the tools that fit it, linked below. Go find out what your brain actually runs on. I will see you over there.